So my name is Bruce Hosfeld, owner of D-Levo, and my wife back there in the corner. We have the store over there out on the concourse there if you haven't been there before. You're going to hear a lot of information tonight, and what I'd really like you to take away from tonight is, well, a lot, but the antioxidants and the monounsaturated fats in olive oil are beneficial to your health. Polyunsaturated fats are not a healthy choice to cook with, and you're probably consuming way too much of them in your diet and don't know it. It's in everything, so keep that in mind. I'm going to talk a lot about that. People often ask how we got started. I think it was like 2012. I was in Colorado getting a bumper made for my truck. And long story short, I went into a place similar to ours, and I was honestly almost repulsed by the idea that, who sips olive oil? That's just ridiculous. I didn't like vinegars because they're so sharp and acidic, the ones in the store. And I tried it, and lo and behold, like all of our customers, I was shocked. I liked it and bought some and used it very sparingly, which is probably what you guys do as compared to now. Long story short, though, I went to Oakland to check out our supplier. Went through some olive oil class at UC Davis and at Veronica Foods that they put on. And it changed my life. A little bit later, quit my job of 30 years at the fire department and became obsessed with high-quality olive oil, not regular olive oil. We'll talk about that. Most recently, my wife and I just got back from Greece, where we're going to talk a lot about this really special Kalamata olive oil that we get from there. It's the highest oleocanthal level in the world. Pretty unique. We take lots of classes and study. I'm just finishing up a class on antiquity of olive oil, or olive oil in antiquity in the Mediterranean. It's just fascinating. My wife cooks everything with olive oil, and I put it on everything, and you'll see a lot of that. We have an amazing staff. They're extremely knowledgeable, and to keep up on the latest technology there, my manager and assistant there, Carly, went to a summit put on by our supplier, Veronica Foods, down in Winters, California. They visited Cobram Estates, which is winners of numerous awards. They use cutting-edge technology. They even got high-tech vacuum relaxers, so opposite of what you're going to see where I was at in Greece. They've got 2.3 million trees in Australia, and they also have a lot in Winters, California. Just some pictures from their facility you see there. Compare that to what you're going to see a little later. It's pretty interesting. Our supplier, we get our product from Veronica Foods. They're a fourth-generation Italian family that imports olive oil. And because of all the poor quality out there, they actually created their own ultra-premium standard. You're going to hear a lot about much stricter chemistry standards. Only 2% of the world's oil that they sample traveling will meet that chemistry standard. All of our oil is chemically tested at Modern Olive Lab out of Australia. They also now have a lab in Winters that they use. Quick note about this. This is Rachel on the left there. So I've dealt with her and Leah on the phone. I've met them in person, but it's kind of a funny story. Rachel had the misfortune of being stuck with me in a van for 10 days traveling around in Greece, and that's with Peter. And I'm always calling her sister there, Leah, about chemistry questions. And she's like, nobody ever asked me this stuff, Bruce. And so I'm traveling around with Rachel and bugging the heck out of her. And she's like, Bruce, nobody ever asked me this stuff. And I keep going and going. And I don't know, a day or two later, I'm digging away and digging away. And she just goes, wow, you really are an olive oil geek. So that's my credentials. I said, thank you very much. I bugged the heck out of it. And most people just sell the product because it tastes good. And that's how I got started until I learned about what they really got. So as we get started with the class, the ladies here are going to start bringing out a ice cream with Persian lime olive oil from Tunisia and a blackberry ginger balsamic from Modena, Italy. So they'll be serving that as we get going on here. So currently, people don't realize, but there's an olive oil crisis in Spain and throughout Europe. Sounds kind of funny in America here, but it's a serious, big deal there. There's water rationing being put in place in many places in Spain as they were hit with record heat temperatures and severe drought. Olive oil prices have doubled in Europe in many places. The last 2 years have cut Spanish oil production by 80%. Italy has lost more than 20 million trees in the last 10 years to plant disease. Greece, where we were at, was down 50%. Forecast for Peru is down a staggering 90% predicted for this year. It's just not even going to be worth picking. Peru had a great crop last year, which was shipped to, this fall's crop was shipped to Spain. They grow a very, I want to say poor quality oil, not in general, but bad times, they'll grow a poor quality crop, ship it to Spain or Italy, refine it, and then it's sold as Italian olive oil, and everybody's so excited about it. So much of olive oil in Italy is not from Italy. People don't realize that. We'll talk more about that later, though. Kind of where to start with olive oil. So I guess you would say, in the beginning, at least according to Greek mythology, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, was vying for power with Poseidon, god of the sea, over who'd be the patron deity of the largest, most influential city at the time. To resolve the dispute, Zeus and the Olympians held a contest. The winner was Athena, as Poseidon struck the rock on top of the Acropolis, and the earth trembled, and salt water sprang out. Amazingly, Athena knelt down and gracefully touched the rock, and a full-bloom sprouted olive tree grew up in full bloom there. It's a symbol of peace, wisdom, and agriculture, and the gods declared her the winner, and the city was subsequently named after her and shortened to Athens. And we have fossilized leaves dating back 20 to 30 million years. The first trees probably grew in Syria and Asia Minor and then spread across through the Mediterranean. Research suggests that domesticated olive trees appeared between 6 and 8,000 BC in Turkey and Syria. So you have this olive tree out there growing wild, looking more like a large bush. We're used to more pruned olive trees. It really is a large bush with a nasty, bitter-tasting fruit until someone figured out that if you prune the tree, pick the fruit, crush it, squeeze it, collect the oil, they could use it for many purposes. This really is amazing when you consider if you take a bite of an olive, it's on a tree, it is extremely bitter. In Rome alone, this is just staggering, they imported almost 2 billion gallons of oil in a 260-year period. In Lesbos, it's estimated there were 11 million trees in the 17th century. There was many laws pertaining to exporting olive oil. They didn't want to ship out more than what they had. The Code of Hammurabi, it's a Babylonian legal stele now in the Louvre, dating back 4,500 years. See a picture up there, there's a whole chapter on governing, the laws governing olive oil trade. So you think about it this way, olive oil was a source of light in every house, church, and building. It was a base for perfumes, cosmetics, anointing oils, used for funerary purposes and ritual purification. It was a lubricant for moving parts. It was commonly used as a sexual lubricant and contraceptive all in one. I don't know if that really worked, but they used it. The tanning of animal hides. And interestingly, it was applied to your skin to clean yourself before there were soaps. You would lube yourself down with olive oil, and it's called a strigil. It's a curved blade, and you would scrape your skin, and it would pull the dirt and oil off of your skin, and that's what was used for cleansing. It was later a base for soaps, which the majority of oil was being shipped to Marseille, France, where the famous Marseille soap came from. Every wrestling school and gymnasium rubbed down their athletes with olive oil. It was thought to make them stronger and protect your skin. It's estimated that a wealthy person in antiquity could consume 50 to 70 liters of olive oil, which is right up my alley. I don't keep track, but I bet you I'm pretty close. Oh, and I forgot to light I actually have a little ceramic lamp with olive oil. Hope it didn't all leak out before I got down here. And that'll smoke for just a second as that cotton wick burns. But just imagine that was your light source everywhere. And they would use a poor quality oil for the lamps and consume the more quality oil. Let me keep up here. Olive oil was cultivated basically and processed much in the same way as it is today, other than a little more modern techniques. But it was handpicked, crushed by large stones, placed in bags, and pressed by heavy weights to extract the oil. They even had cold pressed oil, as there was actually a system in place to use hot water to get more oil out. And they even knew about harvesting early for higher quality, which we're going to talk about later. But imagine back then everything dirty, rancid, very ripe fruit, poor storage, high temperatures, long harvesting times. The longer that fruit stays on the tree, the poorer quality it becomes. I just would imagine there was a lot of rancid olive oil back then. Some common sayings, there was a ton of them, and I just have a couple here. You would say, "He's leaking oil," meant he was crazy. And she ran out of oil, she died. Some proverbs at the time were, and this is just brilliant. If you do not press olives, you will not extract oil. It's like, well, duh. But I think it meant if you don't try, you won't succeed. And my favorite is, I want to get a big sign here for the store. Foundations of a good home was bread, wine, and olive oil. It's like, perfect. But olive trees were so vitally important to the economies and lifestyles of antiquity in the Mediterranean. The olive tree greatly shaped the life, culture, and customs in ancient Greece, far more than you realize. I'm just finishing up a class, like I say, on antiquity, oil and antiquity from University of Athens. But just imagine if our light source, food source, lubrication, workforce, cosmetics, perfume, soap, hygiene, art, literature, and medicine were all based on just that one tree. I mean, it's really remarkable when you think about it. Their world really revolved around olive oil in everything, just as ours revolves around crude oil. We just switched. Ancient medicine. Since prehistoric times, the olive tree has been used in medicine and used as a medicine to prevent illness and maintain health. Physicians in antiquity, and particularly during the Byzantine period, provide a wealth of documented information for us. Olive oil was commonly used as a fever reducer and treatment for neurological conditions. As an example, olive oil baths were a popular remedy for nerve pain. Haven't tried that one yet, but I don't have any nerve pain, so maybe something you can try. It'd take a lot of oil, though. Picture of Hippocrates there. He's considered the father of modern medicine. He was born in 460 BC. He wrote over 70 books and studied and scientifically described disease and treatments in very detailed observations. He, along with the greatest physicians of the time, believed that olive oil had remarkable healing properties and recommended it for daily consumption, which is something my wife and I do a lot. The Hippocratic Corpus records over 60 medicinal uses for olive oil. And really interestingly, massage with high quality olive oil was used to treat rheumatic and arthritic pain. And it's kind of funny, my wife and I, when we go get a massage once in a while, we take our own bottle of Kalamata olive oil and we have them use that. Why use, I don't know, whatever else they're using, but you're getting the antioxidants from the olive oil. Olive oil did form the basis of the Hippocratic diet along with wheat and wine. Interestingly, he states two kinds of oil were best. Pretty interesting to me back that long ago. From wild olive trees, which were pretty rare in his time, about 400, what did I say, 460 BC. Yeah. But get this, oil made from unripe olives, cold pressed without using hot water. I mean, I don't know how they would know, but they figured out that there's a better quality without applying heat to it, which we're going to talk a lot about in the second half. Amazingly, we'll see just how accurate he was in these areas. And I personally believe the anti-inflammatory properties of olive oil greatly influence the health of people in the Mediterranean. Grades of olive oil. This can be confusing. It comes in many grades. There's a lot of confusion, such as pure, light, extra light. I don't know, there's so much. All those fancy words are just for advertising. They're a worse quality product. They're not a better one. So we have extra virgin olive oil. Technically, it's supposed to be of excellent flavor, cold pressed, no chemicals or refining, no taste or smell defects by a third-party tasting panel. Contain less than 0.8 grams free fatty acid, and that doesn't mean anything to you, but it will by the end of the night. That's a very high number. It accounts for less than 10% of the oil produced in many countries. It's supposed to be high in antioxidants, but honestly, who's testing it? Zero, nobody, except Veronica Foods, our supplier. Virgin olive oil is of reasonably good flavor with up to 3.5 defects, and that could be taste or smell. Up to 2 grams of free fatty acid, which is a huge number, drastically lowering your smoke point. We're going to talk about that a lot later also. You have pure olive oil, which is a blend of refined olive oil, which you don't want, and virgin olive oil, which is less quality than extra virgin, so it's not that great. It's low in antioxidants and flavor, high in trans fats, which are not good. And that's a whole other class. Trans fats were actually banned in 2018 in the United States. We've all consumed a lot of them in the 70s, 80s, and up until 2018. They are created when you heat an oil. Kind of deep fried oil, fast food's horrible. But anyway, same thing with refining oils. You can create trans fats, which you don't want. Refined oils of poor quality oil, refined to remove any defects in odors or taste. It's generally high in the free fatty acids, but they've been refined and taken out. They use high heat filters, chemicals, which also destroy the antioxidants. You have Lampante oil, which is not fit for human consumption. The olives are often spoiled or insect infested, mostly used in the industrial market. Oh, I want to make sure I was on the right slide there. Anyway, they can have up to 3.3 grams of free fatty acid, which is grossly high, up to 6 defects in taste or smell, and they have to be refined chemically before they can be consumed. And then it can legally be added to olive oil and called pure olive oil. You take crappy oil, refine it, and call it pure, which it is pure, just terrible quality. You have pomace oil. That's the oil extracted, the oil pomace, after the first press. So by using hexane and high heat, you can refine that for human consumption. It's commonly used in restaurants. It's a cheap product, and it is olive oil. It's, again, high in trans fats due to the heat applied during refining, very high temperatures. So basically a second press. And as I said, the European nation has strict laws governing how many trans fats can be in your refined or in your cooking oils in restaurants. So I don't think we really monitor that much here, but they have a limit of, and I don't know who's testing it, but they have a limit of how much can be in that oil at restaurants. But there's absolutely no reason to use any of those oils up there other than extra virgin. I just can't even believe anybody does, but they do. Oh, and just another note on there, I talk about refining. Hexane is a byproduct of gasoline vapor, which naturally occurs in crude oil. That's commonly used throughout the industry to extract oils from their source. They then use alkalis, are used to transform the high free fatty acids in an oil, and they scrape that off, and you've chemically refined your olive oil, which I personally don't want to use. This is Veronica Foods, our supplier. If you see that little UP symbol up there in a store somewhere, they are buying their olive oil from the same place. We're not a franchise or anything, but other people do buy from Veronica Foods. So this is how I order my olive oil. So on the far left, you have the International Olive Oil Council. I'm just going to shorten it to IOC. That's what you're buying in a store. On the far right is Veronica Foods, we call the UP standard. In the middle, some gray areas where we won't talk about it because they're in the middle. We're two extremes. So the IOC, when they test a free fatty acid of an olive oil, think of a chain of a triglyceride. It's 3 molecules bound together, and you break off a chain of that, and it becomes a free fatty acid. That's what determines your smoke point. It's not that it's any special avocado or olive oil or grapeseed oil. It's the free fatty acid content. They're allowed up to 0.8. You'll see on ours is below 0.3. It's really a sign of the fruit. You have to go from tree to mill immediately. It cannot, we'll talk about later, but it cannot sit around very long. The lower that number, the higher your smoke point. Peroxide value, another sign of freshness. As an oil oxidizes, it turns to peroxide. Think of metal oxidizing. Up to 20 parts per million, you'll see on ours are below 9, and these numbers are on our tags. So you're going to see usually in the 2 to 7 range on our FUSI tags. Phenolic content, you see they don't test for that anywhere. So technically you could have a good tasting olive oil, an extra virgin olive oil, and be very low in phenols, which are your antioxidants. Ours are a minimum of 130, which I never see that low, but we always do carry usually a mild, and they might be in the 160 to 250 range. Not everybody likes a strong, pungent olive oil if you haven't used it much, so we do carry some of those. Typically, the higher that number gets, the more stronger and robust the olive oil is. And not always, but anyway, so our minimum is 130. A high is in the 500 and 600 range. Middle ground, 300 and 400. And occasionally we get some that are in the 1,000 range. K2s and 3s, another technical term, gets really in depth on freshness. Again, ours are a little bit lower, but oleic acid I want to talk about. That is your monounsaturated omega-9 heart healthy fats. That's what you want in anything you're going to cook with. That's what you want to consume. Extra virgin olive oil is a minimum of 55. I don't even know why they put a limit of 83. You would never have that high, and if you did, it'd be good. But typically, you'll see ours is about 20% higher. You'll see on our tag 65 to 70, so it's higher in monounsaturated fats. DAGs measures the triglycerols. Think of wine taste or wine. When they do wine scoring, the higher the number, the higher the quality. Again, that's something that's not tested for. Ours is above 90, which is huge. All of ours are always above 95. A little note I'm going to talk about later is a test that UC Davis did where they took everything off the shelves in the store and tested everything. I think there was 1 or 2 out of 100 and some that were in the 80s, a couple in the 50s, and all the rest were 30s and 40s. Just poor quality. So all of ours are above 90. PPP test measures the chlorophyll as it degrades in olive oil. And adulterated olive oil, excuse me, will show up here. And again, that's not tested for by the IOC. Again, ours has the lowest number. Anything added to that, poor quality or diluted with anything will show up there. Ah, wow. So those are how I order my olive oil. Kind of got a little ahead of myself here, but currently that UP standard is the highest in the world. It was established in 2013 by Veronica Foods, and it set forth and employed groundbreaking restrictions and parameters in olive oil. It raised the bar and really showed consumers what's in their oil, or should I say what's not in your oil. Everything from growing, harvesting, transporting, processing, storage of olives, all the way down to its chemical makeup. There's just a lot of restrictions for a UP oil. All of our oil meets that standard, and you won't see it anywhere else in the world. That raising of the bar, so to speak, and the quest worldwide to find and produce the best olive oil in the world put the Bradleys, and I would say Michael Bradley, on the world stage. If you're anybody in the olive oil world anywhere, you know of Michael Bradley. And this is what, it's really unfortunate, this is what you should see on every batch of olive oil when you're buying it at the store. You just don't see any information on there. And it is hard because most small boutique places like ours, we get a specific varietal from a specific grower. When you get commercially, they're big conglomerates of many growers, even many countries, and put together, so it'd be hard for them to do this, but it's what you should see. Wow, my writing didn't show up though on the screen here for some reason. Well, I'll have to tell you about it. So what's this got to do with olive oil, right? I mean, nothing? Actually, it's got everything to do with olive oil. You can't believe everything you read, see, or hear. Here's just a couple examples. So this book, Extra Virginity by Tom Mueller, he wrote that in 2011 about the scandalous world of olive oil, exposing what had been going on for years in the industry. And he went on to become the world expert in olive oil fraud. So in 2011, UC Davis examined 134 bottles of olive oil purchased in the stores throughout California, and 69% did not meet extra virgin olive oil standards. And there are many reasons why, and be fair to that test, it's not that they were all horrible or bad. Many of them just did not meet extra virgin standards, so they had taste or smell defects, but they weren't extra virgin olive oil. And the DAGs, like I said, on those, like 99% of them were 30s and 40s, just poor quality. 60 Minutes did the same test. I remember this was good for business. 60 Minutes did the same thing in 2016. Almost all of them failed. Bartoli, Star, and several other large companies were sued for having adulterated olive oil and paid large fines. 2017 and 2019, the Italian FBI busted mafia rings exporting fake olive oil, which is common in Italy. It's 3 times more profitable, and apparently so it's a $16 billion a year industry, the agriculture industry fraud, and it's still going strong. And this is something back in '81 I wanted to share with you. You think it might not be pertinent now, but it is, and you're going to see this later on tonight. It's called the toxic oil syndrome, and it's estimated that up to 1,200 people died initially, with another 4,000 in later years due to industrial-grade rapeseed oil being sold as olive oil. 25,000 were hospitalized with lifelong issues. And you think that can't happen here, but you'll see later on that it does. No one is testing olive oil imported into the United States. And every batch of our oil is tested by the world-renowned Modern Olives Lab. Excuse me. We don't hear about it, but there really is an olive oil crisis going on in Spain right now and throughout Europe. And I believe you're going to start seeing a lot of more poor quality olive oil being dumped on the market. They just don't have it. They can't keep up with their own demand in their own country. And you're going to start seeing very poor quality fruit, diluting it down and selling it as olive oil, as I believe. But I've already read dozens of articles in Italy just in the last couple months of police seizing large quantities of adulterated olive oil. So I think you're going to start seeing that happen more. Not to pick on anybody in particular, but I do want to touch on this. Dr. Oz claimed you could tell good olive oil from bad olive oil by just putting it in the fridge. A good olive oil was going to solidify. Although he made claims that there's a lot of bad olive oil out there, and I agree with that. But Professor Wang at UC Davis put 7 different varietals of olive oil in the cooler for 40 hours at 40 degrees at 60 hours. Some did congeal, some did not, but none of them solidified, and I've done this myself. They will congeal up a little bit depending on the wax content of the skin of the different varietals of olives, but has nothing to do with the quality at all. This is my favorite. So Dr. Gundry claims his gold olive oil is 30 times higher in polyphenols than regular olive oil. That's pretty good oil. So I reached out directly asking for the HPLC reports, which is a chemistry report on the olive oil that we do on ours. Asked for that for what the polyphenols levels were and who tested it. And as you can imagine, crickets, nothing. And so like I say, HPLC report, well, I'm going to show you one later. It's a chemistry report I get on the olive oil, and it actually shows you what's in it. But his claims are he claims that their olive oil is so strong that a half a tablespoon of this Moroccan gold per day is equal to, what do you think? An entire liter of regular traditional olive oil, and it has a shelf life of 3 years. Besides being ridiculous, I gotta say he's probably right. You didn't catch this. Did you notice in his claims I said higher than regular olive oil, meaning the refined or pure that we talked about earlier, 0 antioxidants. It's very slick marketing. Doesn't say extra virgin olive oil. Doesn't say what the level of phenols are in their oil or what they're testing it to. So if I have a polyphenol count of 500 on our olive oil and I compare that to a pure olive oil that's been refined, I can say it's 500 times higher in antioxidants. You're going, wow, it's huge. That's a good number, but that's normal for a high. So you really got to watch that marketing. But the organization Olive Oil Times had an international certified taste panel test his oil, and guess what they came up with? Lampante oil, rancid. And that's why some of the reviews, and I looked this up on Amazon, talk about how nasty it tastes. But the reviews, people are saying, but it's so good for you. That's what they've been told. So you really got to watch that. Another one, kind of similar, the governor oil from Greece. And you'll see this with a lot on the internet from Greece. So University of Athens uses a method called NMR. It's a fairly new method to test olive oil. It's not bad or wrong, but they're the only place using that. The International Olive Oil Council use the HPLC method, which the whole world uses. And it's like comparing apples to oranges. So they claim their olive oil is 10 times higher in antioxidants, but they're using the NMR method, and that shows a number about 3 times higher than what an HPLC report is. And that's fine if you use that for everything or use this for everything, but you can't compare the two. So when you see that advertising, you go, wow, well, theirs is 10 times higher. You got to look at how they're testing it. Our growers, we get our olive oil actually from all over the world. We source different countries because everybody has a different season. All of our growers do provide certification of being pesticide, fungicide, and herbicide free. Some growers, such as Coburn's Estate in Australia, have enormous tracts of land, like I said, 2.3 million trees. They harvest that with a large truck, it's on the next slide here, called a Colossus. That truck literally drives over the tree. They use very young trees and high density, 3-4-year-old olive oil trees. But then you have others, such as Lacarius Farms in Greece, where my wife and I just got back. Really cool, 5th generation, very traditional, everything done by hand, 150-year-old trees. They actually lay nets out around everything's picked that way. Laid nets out, shake the tree branches, collect the fruit. I'll show you about that here in a little bit, but just wanted to show you that picture of my wife Jenny. That's walking into his olive grove there. No machinery in there, and that's pretty wide there. The rest of the path was this little narrow path through rundown old buildings and a few houses and a little church that probably only held 10 people, a tiny little thing. But that's how they harvest their fruit there. Everything is carried out by hand. Harvesting. Okay, so those are a picture of a colossus. You'll see, like in Australia, where they've got millions of trees. That machine just drives right over it. That's just me hand picking some trees in Greece there. I wanted to share this picture with my wife here, Jen. So we had a little class. We went out and picked 40 olive trees by hand. It was pretty neat. And we came back that evening. At the mill, we were gonna crush our own olives and make some fused orange olive oil. And we pulled up, and I just remember it was so funny. So Rachel was with me, and she got out and she goes, "Oh, that hurts my eyes." And what she meant by that is UP oils can never be stacked, stored in silos or bins, because you think about it, it's like a peach. You wouldn't stack peaches, they're going to bruise. And you tend to think olives are hard and tough. Same thing, they're tiny little microscopic bruise inside, raises that free fatty acid content. So UP oil is picked and harvested or crushed and milled. Peter also mills for other locals in there, so those were not our olives, but I just remember Rachel got out saying that. It was kind of funny. I want to show you. So, first picture, so you go from that colossus and millions of trees to this. So, I say hand-picked. About 20% stay on the tree after he used that machine there, and he walks through and does all the trees with that in Greece. In the lower half, upper half had some more modern irrigated olive trees, the lower Mani Peninsulas, and that's pretty decent there. Some of it were just like, God, this harsh, rocky, horrible terrain. You just think, how can anything grow there? So then those nets are picked up, put in a little shaker, and get out the leaves and twigs, and that's how everything's harvested there. Then you get into large commercial places, and you'll see this.
To introduce the 6420 Super High Density Olive Harvester. Using feedback from industry growers, processors, and nurseries, Oxbow engineers designed the 6420 from the ground up with a focus on providing the industry with a custom solution. The 6420 delivers the productivity.
I don't want to play the whole video, but you see that thing just drives over the trees. It's just incredible. There's not even a twig left. The olives come out and dump into a truck following it, and it's just not even a twig in there. I want to talk a little about processing at the mill. Let's see here, my next picture. So remember, free fatty acids are formed by enzymes attacking the fats. You break off a chain of that triglyceride. There are 3 molecules bound together. They're formed during very ripe fruit or very high temperatures during refining. So the free fatty acid content alone, period. Did you hear that? The free fatty acid content alone is what determines the smoke point of any type of oil. It's not because it's grapeseed or avocado, it's that free fatty acid content. And I could really get sidetracked on that, but I'll just say, so refined oils can be 0, but there's nothing to protect the oil from oxidizing. So they have just a little higher smoke point. But you're going to see later, it doesn't matter. It's still not good for your oil. But that's why some vegetable oils might list 500 or 550 degrees. But remember, free fatty acid, what determines the smoke point of an oil. The higher the free fatty acid content, the lower the smoke point, the quicker the oil is going to oxidize and go rancid. And that starts actually at about 300 degrees when you're cooking. Oil's oxidizing and creating aldehydes, and you don't realize it. Exceedingly high levels of oxidation in your blood have been shown to be a risk factor for several diseases and insulin resistance. So you want a low free fatty acid, and you want an oil that's not going to oxidize, even at low temperatures. You don't have to have it burning, smoking at 500 or 600 degrees to be harmful. Part of our UP standard is that fruit has to be crushed within 2 to 6 hours. Fruit doesn't sit around for days or stacked, waiting to be crushed. That ensures the integrity of the fruit, and it keeps that low free fatty acid content below 0.3, which these are small numbers, but on a chart that smoke point just shoots up the lower that number. Extra virgin olive oil can be up to 0.8, and that's the thing, nobody's testing it, So it's supposed to be that, and you hope it is that, but you don't know what you're getting until you test it. At the mill there you see some olives that we picked, which were not an early UP oil. We just went and picked some Korniki olives trees. But anyway, I'm dumping it in the hopper there where and their leaves and twigs are blown away. And then it passes through a water rinsing mechanism, which you see there on the bottom left. The fruit then travels into a slicer where it's sliced up into tiny pieces. And then it runs through a malaxer where it is crushed and mixed into a paste for varying lengths of time, anywhere up to 1 hour. The longer the time, the more oil you get, but the more oxidation and the more free fatty acid, or the higher the free fatty acid. And so people don't realize that's a malaxer there. So it's gone through, it's gone up the belt, been rinsed. That little blue machine up there isn't anything fancy, but it slices it up, goes through that malaxer, and normally that's covered. As that churns up to 1 hour, you're breaking out fat. When you squeeze an olive, it's mostly water. The fat is in little tiny microscopic sacs, and it has to be crushed and broken up, malaxed, to get that oil spread out. So these are malaxed up to 1 hour, and you get much more oil, poor quality. UP oils, which is just standard industry practice, UP oils only malax for about 15 minutes, but you lose about 50% of your oil. And then it can be refined later for a second press, poor quality. But UP oils, you just don't get much out of it. Here's a picture of a malaxer there. And so we dumped our olives, malaxed them, and we bottled our own olive oil. It was really cool. Heat can be applied here to get more oil out, but again, of less quality. 120 degrees is what people say, cold press, that's 120 degrees. You think about it, if it's 100 degrees outside and they're crushing olives somewhere, just the friction in there can get that to 120 degrees. UP oils have no heat applied, and often a cold water system is applied to the machinery to keep the temperatures around 50 degrees, really cold pressed. You get much less oil, but it keeps that low free fatty acid, or that free fatty acid content down, which increases your smoke point and increases the polyphenol levels. Some mills are now, like Coburn Estates, are even doing malaxers like that, new high-tech ones in a vacuum, just to increase the polyphenol level again. And so you talk about cold press. That's at Peter's Estate there. That was 50 degrees. But then it goes off to the oil after it goes to the malaxer. It goes off to a centrifuge, or often called an extractor. It's that blue machine there on the far left. That spins the oil at high velocities and separates the vegetable water and solids from the oil. From there it goes to a separator, which removes the last traces of oil, that big silver-looking machine there, and oil pours out of the spigot. It usually looks very dark green, and that's just from the chlorophyll in there, and that will settle out. An expensive part of the UP program is that oils shipped from overseas are topped with argon so the oils don't oxidize along the way. The whole thing about oil is oxidation. We're going to talk about that all night. That's not something that's done commercially. There's no reason for it, but all of our oils are. And once in Veronica Foods, they're in those big stainless steel 10,000-gallon containers, again, topped with argon. When I order oil, it actually is filled right then. They don't pre-bottle and have oil just sitting around oxidizing. When we receive it, it goes into stainless steel fusti's, and the one thing I can say we're really blessed, our oil doesn't sit in our fusti very long because we move a lot of oil. You're just getting a really fresh product. And just a few words about this before we really get into more chemistry of olive oil. As you can see, we use copious amounts of oil and vinegar at our house. Our dark bottles help protect from UV light, but even black glass does not protect from all wavelengths. So if you have oil, we all know you don't want to let it sit out in the sun, but even just indirect sunlight is really detrimental to olive oil. Heat just sitting by the stove, people worry about, is not a problem. It's the heat from being in the sunlight. So that's our counter. I actually just started with, a couple years ago, was studying UV light and glass. And so the ones that I have by the big sliding glass door actually put in stainless steel because they do get more light there. And what happens is that, I say, excuse me, as an oil starts going downhill, it's very high in phenols and low in peroxide, and those phenols will slowly come down to keep that peroxide level down. I want you to use it at this level. You know, I'm confident our oils will last a very long time because of the chemistry. So just like I say, try to keep it out of sunlight. You can't predict when an oil is going to go rancid, but you can tell where it's at in its shelf life by looking at its chemistry. If you know the chemistry of any type of oil, I don't care if it's corn oil you buy, you'll know the quality, but you have to see that chemistry. Okay, sit down and buckle up. Carla, put your seatbelt on. This is the tough stuff here. Okay, oxidation. These are some things that are going to carry through the rest of the night. It's a normal process that takes place in your body. Growing and aging, you're all oxidizing right now, just as that apple is. So free radicals. They're waste substances produced by cells, and if your body cannot remove them sufficiently, you enter into oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is basically an imbalance between the production of free radicals and the ability of your body to counteract their effects through their neutralization by antioxidants. So you need antioxidants to get rid of the free radicals in your body. Free radicals come from basically everything around us: sunlight, smoke, chemicals everywhere. They're a trigger for disease and chronic inflammation, and they're damaging to living cells. So polyphenols, phenols, biophenols. For tonight, technically, their purposes, for our purposes, they're antioxidants. They're substances found in plants known to have antioxidant properties. Olive oil has the highest antioxidant level by far of any other olive oil, even pure quality, good oil of any type. So if you only remember a couple things here tonight, remember this next one. Oxidative stability. It's how resistive fats are to breaking down with oxygen. So you want an oil that is oxidative stable, that does not break down and oxidize easily. Remember that. And you don't want to ingest oxidized oil, which, believe me, you are when you're eating fast food. Smoke point, temperatures at which fats break down in smoke. We've all heard that. The types of fat that we all consume. We all know about saturated fats, most of us. But structurally, they do not contain any double bonds, meaning they're very high or stable at high temperatures, and they do not oxidize easily. Typically recognized as not healthy when consumed in excess, and most diets are high in saturated fats. But funny, they are stable for cooking at high temperatures as far as their oxidative stability, but they're bad for your health, at least in my opinion, most opinions. Some sources are lard, butter, and coconut oil. You notice you can leave butter on a counter for quite a while before it goes rancid because it's a saturated fat. Polyunsaturated fats, kind of the whole key here tonight. They're complicated. They have two double bonds, making them sensitive to heat and unstable at high temperatures, something you've probably never heard. They oxidize much faster than monounsaturated or saturated fats, and in some cases 25 times faster depending on which type of oil. Polyunsaturated fats from refined vegetable oils contain 0 polyphenols to protect the oil from forming aldehydes and other toxic polar compounds when you start heating that oil, even at 300 degrees. Polyunsaturated fats come in two forms, omega-3 and omega-6. Both are needed by our bodies, and your body cannot create either one of those. Omega-3 is an essential fatty acid. Most diets are low in this. That's why a lot of people take fish oils. And just an interesting fact, if you research this, a lot of fish oil is already oxidized. It's a polyunsaturated fat, at least according to Consumer Lab Reports, which is a really interesting site. It is a pay site, but they review products and they analyze the chemistry of different products, and they'll actually go brand by brand and tell you pass, fail, pass, you know, whatever it is. And it's amazing how many, even vitamins will say, you know, it's 50 milligrams of this, and when they test it, it's really only 30. And some are actually a little higher than what they actually say. But anyway, many fish oils are already oxidized, so you're consuming, and those will be stinky and taste bad. I mean, if it's fishy and smells bad, it's already oxidized. Got a little sidetracked there, but most sources, you know, like fish oil is a great source of that. But omega-6 is also a polyunsaturated fat, and that's what's in all your vegetable oils. It's an essential fatty acid your body needs. Almost all diets are high in omega-6 because it's all around us, it's in all our food, it's in everything. You're practically drowning in polyunsaturated fats, the omega-6. Sources are all vegetable oils, baked goods, processed foods, anything. You see something that says hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, or they'll say safflower, sunflower, there's a whole list, but those are polyunsaturated fats. They also have additives added to them and preservatives to keep them stable, just sitting out at room temperature. I sometimes see claims that they're healthy to cook with, and this is what you got to look for when you're researching, and you got to look for peer-reviewed studies, not just somebody making claims. But when they say they're healthy to cook with, they're always comparing them to saturated fats. 70s and 80s, we got this low-fat diet, and they came up with polyunsaturated fats and vegetable oils to replace that. So I guess in that sense, yeah, maybe it is healthier than that. Why would you use that when you have a healthier option? One thing researchers do agree on is that they do oxidize very easily, and the average American diet is about 10 to 30 times higher in omega-6 than omega-3. It's everywhere in our diet. And research suggests that a very high imbalanced ratio is a cause of concern to cancer, heart disease, and chronic inflammation. The consensus seems to be that keeping your ratio at 4 to 1, 4 parts omega-6, 1 part omega-3 is the healthiest. But interestingly, when you get your blood tested, and you do have to ask for this, it's going to say up to 15 to 1 is normal. And all the research I've done and read it just disagrees with that. I used to be at 15 to 1. I get my blood tested every year, and I'm down to 5 to 1 now. My wife just did hers. She was 6 to 1. And we're so careful. I mean, I'm thinking I'm even going to be lower. There's a lot of research also from anthropologists suggesting that our ancestors were more closer to a 1 to 1 because of their diet back then. But since excessively high omega-6 levels long-term have been shown to be detrimental, I just really suggest, as I have, you get your blood tested. I'm not a doctor, but it's widely available for modern research. So do you know your omega-3 to 6 ratio? Probably not. The other thing is, do you know your oxidized LDL cholesterol? It's something that nobody ever checks or looks for. You'll be surprised at that. And you can also check your inflammation markers. And that's the whole point of olive oil. It keeps your inflammation markers very low. I just had mine checked. I'm all extremely low. And that's just a precursor to many chronic illnesses and diseases. So remember, cholesterol is good for you in healthy amounts. You just don't want it oxidized. Then we have monounsaturated fats, the one at the bottom there. So they contain one double bond. They're making them very stable at high temperatures. They do not break down into polar compounds easily. These fats are called oleic acid, your monounsaturated omega-9 oil. Monounsaturated fats are considered the healthiest fats according to all sources and research. There honestly is no discrepancies at all on this. Main sources are from olive oil, avocados, and almond oil. However, there are some, occasionally you see people probably don't notice, but they'll say genetically modified, or it'll say high oleic, safflower, sunflower, or canola oil. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's kind of interesting. I'm going to throw in here. Been reading a lot about Alzheimer's, dementia, and research on that. But one of the main fatty acids in your brain is oleic acid, the monounsaturated omega-9 oil. In a study of postmortem brain plasma from people with Alzheimer's, they found a 70 to 80% lower oleic acid isomer connection than those with no impairment. Myelin, which is a picture up there, is a protective sheath that twists around your nerves, including nerves in the brain, and is vital for proper nerve functioning. It's made up of 70% fat, and oleic fat is one of the most common fats in myelin. A lot of studies on that. And so again, just to clarify my opinion here, I'm not a doctor, but I just really suggest you get your omega-6 from food, which I guarantee you're getting plenty of it, not from heating or cooking with the oils that are out there. And your oxidized LDL level is also a useful marker for predicting cardiovascular disease. So get that checked. I'm sure some of our speakers tonight can check that for you if you're interested. Oh God, that hurts my eyes. That's horrible. Oh, that's way better. Way better. Vegetable oils, sunflower, safflower, canola, nasty. They are all heavily refined using hexane and other chemicals, every one of them, to extract oil and remove the impurities, odors, bad taste, free fatty acids, just in order to make them palatable. Gosh, like I said, they are extremely high in unstable polyunsaturated fats called linoleic acid, omega-6. They have an extremely low antioxidant value and absolutely zero when they're refined. There's nothing in there good for you. They've really gotten the name back in the 70s, 80s that they're good for you as compared to a saturated fat. They oxidize really easily. There are some genetically modified varieties that I mentioned. They've been modified to have a higher oleic content, the good monounsaturated fats, but they have no antioxidant value. So again, I ask, why would you use those when you have a healthier choice? Uh-oh, I'm blind, I can't see. And just FYI on canola oil, most people think there's a canola plant out there. There is no such thing. It's a genetically modified rapeseed plant, bred to be intolerant to pesticides because they use heavy pesticide spraying and herbicides to control rust, foma, head rot, powdery mildew. It's just a necessary and common practice. I thought I had a picture, I guess I don't, in rapeseed. Well, I guess I do have that one, yellow one. So rapeseed's that yellow plant there. Just common, practice. So what oils have you been using? I'm going to guess a refined polyunsaturated fat with no oxidants, no antioxidants, and it probably oxidizes really easy. And what would a class be without avocado oil? We all think it's great. I can buy any oil I want wholesale and resell it. We don't. My wife and I eat a lot of avocados, but we don't sell the oil even though it's readily available to me. They're very healthy and they have a fair amount of monounsaturated fats that we talked about. Avocado oil is made from the skin of the fruit. And unfortunately, the avocados you see in the store are usually of higher quality than what they use for making the oil. The skin is ground up and heated and run through a malaxer, just much like olive oil. It's in the medium range of monounsaturated fats, usually 40 to 60%. Our UP oils are all in the 65%. They are low in phenols to protect the oil due to the refining and the poor quality that's out there. And unfortunately, there is no governing agency or standard set forth anywhere in the world governing avocado oil. Nobody. So you have no idea what you're getting. And here's an interesting quote from the American Oil Chemists Society, who actually ranks these labs around that do the HPLC report. This is just 10 months ago. Buying an avocado oil does not guarantee the bottle contains a good quality oil or that it is pure and not actually a blend. And this will make you sad. In 2020, Professor Wang at UC Davis, who's really into food science, did an extensive study of commercially available avocado oil. She took 22 bottles off the shelf of stores, domestic, imported, and online. They were all labeled extra virgin and supposedly mechanically extracted, meaning no chemicals. They then analyzed the chemical makeup of these so-called avocado oils, comparing them to fresh avocados they obtained themselves so they know what it should be. This is what's sad. 15 of the bottles were oxidized, meaning rancid. So you're consuming oxidized fats. 6 were mixed with substantial amounts. This is what I talked about happened in Spain. This was just 2020. 6 were mixed with substantial amounts of sunflower, safflower, or soybean oil. They've been adulterated. So if you're allergic to those, that wasn't good for you. Only 2 were pure and non-oxidized. Those 2 were chosen in Marians, but they've been refined. So why would you want to use it when they've been refined? There's no value to it. They remove they have to remove the high free fatty acids and to get rid of the bad taste, which destroys the antioxidants just to make it palatable and be able to sell to you. Okay, that was 2020. You think, well, maybe it's better. Well, they just did that again last year. 36 private label avocado oils from 19 retailers. 29 were refined because they grow crappy fruit and they have to refine it. Only 3 met quality and purity standards for a refined oil. Again, no value. Of the 7 that were refined, only 6 met the quality, or 6 failed the quality and purity standards. They found that most avocado oil sold in the country and actually I've seen this in other countries that I've researched there. They're just poor quality and purity with no antioxidant value because there's no standard. You can do whatever you want and call it avocado oil. So we don't sell it and we don't use it, but we do eat a lot of avocados. They're good for you. It's just too bad there isn't. Well, actually, another interesting note, Professor Wang, UC Davis, is really leading a big kick to try to get some standards set forth. But you know, you can imagine trying to get the USDA and how government agencies and how that works. But she's trying to get some kind of standard set in place for avocado oil. This is another one that hurts. Turn my back. You know what, for time's sake, I'm not going to get into this, but if you want to come talk to me afterwards, I'll tell you about coconut oil. I'll just say this is a saturated fat. 1 tablespoon is 14 grams of saturated fat. There was a kick quite a few years ago on coconut oil, and I'll explain to you why that is. It has medium and long chain fats in there, and that's about all I'll say, but I'll tell you about it if you want to catch me afterwards. Again, we don't sell it or use it. Good for your skin. This is what you came here for tonight. That's pretty cool. This video. This is the common misconception that you cannot cook with extra virgin olive oil. And I want to say what that's written in stone. It's a law. And I want to ask you where you heard that and how do you know that? It's just everywhere. And there's absolutely no scientific substantiation to this at all. I mean, zero. Other than the widespread use of poor quality, high free fatty acid olive oil that's been in our market. Pretty commonplace. Modern research has proved without a doubt that smoke point does not predict an oil's performance when heated. You're still creating toxic compounds in a polyunsaturated fat at low temperatures. It might take, if it has a smoke point of 50 degrees higher, it might take a little longer to smoke, but you're still creating the compounds. And people are so stuck on, well, it's the smoke point that's determining the quality, and it's not. It's the, number 2, oxidative stability. Remember how it reacts with oxygen? That's a better predictor. Polyunsaturated fats are the least stable. The higher the content in oil, the faster it's going to oxidize, the more toxic compounds you produce. Remember, you can actually get your oxidized LDL tested, and you can check your omega-6 levels. Of all the oils tested, high quality, low free fatty acid olive oil have been shown to produce the lowest levels of harmful polar compounds when being heated. Lots of studies on that deep frying. Refined oils and polyunsaturated fats, omega-6, produce the highest number of polar compounds when heated. And again, that starts at about 300 degrees. Quality EVOs by far have the highest number of phenols, the antioxidants to protect the oil from carcinogens than any other type of oil out there. Honestly, nothing else is even remotely close. And this is pretty interesting. We've all heard you can't cook with olive oil. Well, finally, the USDA came out and they've officially laid to rest that olive oil should not be used for deep frying. It is now on their preferred list of oils to cook with and deep fry. They've completely changed the stance on that. In addition, they've placed it on the high smoke point of oils, contrary to what you're going to still find all over the internet. And well-controlled studies at Harvard University and many others have shown that phenols in olive oil protected the oil from oxidizing in many studies when they're heating that. So think about this: when you've got this much antioxidants in your olive oil and you're heating it, getting the temperature up, they're slowly going to come down. They're sacrificing themselves and keeping the aldehydes down from forming. If you start here, it goes down, then you start forming compounds in your oil. You will lose some when you're cooking with that. So we suggest a low free fatty acid, high phenol oil to cook with and keep your temperatures low. I want to show you this video. In well-controlled studies, though, Harvard University and many others have shown that phenols in olive oil protect the oil from oxidation. Like I said, University of UC Davis in Barcelona have done many studies on home cooking showing the transfer of phenols onto your food. You take frozen veggies, crush them up, do a phenol count, do the same thing with frozen veggies, deep fry them in olive oil, do a phenol count, and they have higher antioxidant values, so they're imparting onto your food. So cooking, you want an oil that has I think I have it on there, a low free fatty acid content below 0.3. All of ours are 0.1 and 2. A high polyphenol count to protect your oil. And an oil that's made up mostly of monounsaturated fats, omega-9, that does not oxidize easily. And an oil that's not refined. And all of our oils meet this criteria, and this is the coolest part of tonight.
So here's a pan that got heated up to, you'll see, roughly 400 degrees, kind of varies
You can see my heat gun there. My heat gun there shows the temperature.
So I'm setting number 5.
I have a
We're all let that heat up. Interesting, you'll see the burner is pretty darn hot, 600 degrees. Again, that's setting number 5. You can see that is 400 degrees right there in the oil and not smoking at all. That's our Kalamata grease, has a free fatty acid content of 0.12. And you can see it's 400 degrees and nothing. Phenols are protecting that.
And that just keeps going on. I just filmed it for quite a while to show you that it's not smoking. You've got high phenols that are protecting aldehydes from forming. You've got a low free fatty acid, which is determining its smoke point. And if you, just FYI, some people, you might be cooking something, you've got an infused oil with herbs in it, or your food, or you're putting spices, you might see some smoke from that, but I can show you right there, it's not your oil. But that has a low free fatty acid content, and that's determines the oil of, or your smoke point of any type of oil. So you still think you can't cook with olive oil? I mean, there's the proof. So personally, we cook at low temperatures just to protect our oil. You can saute your veggies all day at 350 to 400 plus degrees, which is plenty hot. Now that I have a heat gun, I actually checked our pan. Number 5 setting on our stove, which really surprised me years ago, is about 400 degrees. I was always thinking, people I think like me used to just turn that burner up 6, 7, or 8, and then yeah, you're going to burn your food or you got to cook fast, but you'll be surprised if you check your stove how high a temperatures you're really cooking at. I cook all the time with that, and you know, 350, 400 degrees cooks my veggies just fine. I don't need to go to 600. I don't, you know, what the point is. So you can use that. So my point at the time, you know, be healthy as you can. I'm not saying you're going to die tomorrow if you use a polyunsaturated fat. It's just not good for you, and I want to say, why would you when you have a healthier choice? Well, with all that, I've got a lot of information for you. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our speaker, not me. So Obel Rybakov is a doctor of nursing practice, a family nurse practitioner with experience in family practice, integrative medicine, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, women and men's health, pediatrics, nutrigenomics, and medical aesthetics. She's Ukrainian American and is trilingual. She's a wife of 20 years and a mom to 3 boys. Her passions include medical mission work in Ukraine. In her spare time, she loves studying the Word of God, leading worship at her church, and hiking and skiing in the mountains of Wenatchee Valley. She's worked in medicine since the age of 19 and as a primary health care provider for the last 4 years. Currently, she began practicing independently at Retreat Wellness and Med Spa. It's an integrative clinic which offers provider visits, lab services, and wellness IV infusions. Her vision is to use this practice as a stepping stone into a nonprofit wellness center in Wenatchee Valley. My wife and I have used her services many times over the years and will continue to do so. Here you go. Good to see you.
Thank you. I have a very short talk today, and I was thinking, what can I say, you know, after all that awesome knowledge about olive oil and whatnot. And 2 things really stood out to me when I was thinking about examples to share with you guys. And the first one is just the model that we use for treatment of heart disease. And when I think of cholesterol in particular, I think, oh my goodness, we've been chasing cholesterol for a very long time. We've been trying to flush it out of the body with so many things. And when I think of cholesterol, I have to explain to my patients a lot of the times that cholesterol, all it is just a Band-Aid to the real problem. So when we test cholesterol in the bloodstream, we're like, oh my goodness, it's high, let's do something about it. But all it is if you look at a blood vessel and you look at damage that has been done to the vessel walls, that damage has to be covered with something so that it doesn't burst, basically, like a pipe. And what that damage is being covered with is cholesterol. And yet we want to just flush it out of the body and do nothing with the damage. So it is so, so important to heal the damage. And then the cholesterol won't be there in such high amounts. And so another thing that I wanted to share with you is a beautiful example. One of my patients came to me and he says, my cholesterol has just been going through the roof over the last few years. I'm not going to take cholesterol medication. Don't even talk me into it. I said I wasn't planning on it. He said, what can you do for me? Like, I've tried it all. And he did such a lovely job. He is a hiker. He could run up these hills that I could barely walk up every single morning, and he's just changed his diet altogether for a few years. And I said, let's try olive oil and a few more ingredients that I told him to add into his olive oil. So every single morning for the following 2 months, he was taking a shot of this beautiful olive oil, Kalamata. I forgot the name. I told him, just go to the store at Pipus and ask them for their highest quality olive oil. It's that oil. And add a few other ingredients. They were all natural. I call them my secret sauce. And take a shot of that every single morning. So 2 months later, he came back to me for a lab review because we did a cholesterol check. And his total cholesterol went down from nearly 400 to 179. That was the only change he made. And so with that said, did we lower that cholesterol count in his bloodstream? Yes, and not exactly. Not exactly, because what we've achieved with the olive oil and the other ingredients is reduction of the inflammation in his blood vessels, reduction of the damage that has been done over the years and years, and improvement in his whole cardiovascular health. And all thanks to the olive oil and a few other ingredients. So those are the two things that I wanted to share on that topic with you guys. So thank you for having me, Bruce, and for this beautiful talk.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's also a great book. I didn't have any to bring with you tonight, but it's called The Pink Ribbon Diet by Mary Flynn, really studying breast cancer and prostate cancer and the different antioxidants. There's a lot of anti-cancer, what's this word? Antioxidants that have been shown to have anti-cancer properties. Not for everything, of course, but those were two that her research was on. It's a pretty interesting book called The Pink Ribbon Diet. So we're going to get into health benefits, and here's some of the few main antioxidants in olive oil. But remember, there's over 200 compounds in olive oil that work together and have a synergistic effect. It's not just this one's high in squalene, so it's the best. But these are the main ones. Squalene, it's a lipid found in high quantities in shark liver oil. It's a common ingredient in skincare products, lipsticks, moisturizers. It occurs naturally in the oil secreted from the glands on your skin. Olive oil has the second highest source of squalene, and since it's bioidentical to the moisture on your skin, it absorbs quickly and acts as a natural moisturizer, antioxidant, and most importantly, it's a free radical scavenger to protect your skin, which is the largest organ on your body. You can't tell tonight, but I love showing people when they come into the store, I'm wearing olive oil tonight. Once or twice a week, I don't measure it, but probably a quarter cup. Get out of the shower, my wife and I cover our whole body with olive oil. You think it's going to be this greasy, slimy mess. That squalene there within there, it just soaks in. It's just absolutely incredible. You would never know that's on my body. So I'll wait about 20 minutes, take a towel if there's not any excess, but if you have, hair on your arms, there might be someone there. Go about my business and do that once or twice a week. After age 30 or 40, your blood levels drop drastically. So I'm putting it on the outside, but I'm also ingesting it. There's many ongoing studies on the use of squalene for its anti-cancer, antioxidant possibilities. It's also been shown to help the body with the synthesis of cholesterol and the protection from UV-induced photoaging of skin. The other thing I do, it's kind of funny, but it is true. Whenever we go on vacation or go to the beach or anywhere, every single day, first thing in the morning we take a bottle of, and squalene, it's in different levels. Again, doesn't mean one oil is better than the other. One might be 2,000, one might be 10,000. I take the highest squalene bottle and we go on vacation. I put it on every single day we go out, a lot, and I do put sunscreen on. And the rest of the day, I feel like I'm bulletproof. I can go swim in the ocean, the salt water, the sun, the wind, and my skin is just soft and moist. It really is amazing. Hydroxytyrosol, tyrosol, and tyrosol acetate. These are one of the most, hydroxytyrosol is one of the most powerful antioxidants out there. It has an ORAC score rating of 45 to 70,000, which is your oxygen radical absorbency capacity. It's 10 times higher than green tea and 30 times higher than vitamin C. It's considered a free radical scavenger in your nervous system. Most interestingly, it's the only polyphenol known that can naturally cross your blood-brain barrier in high quantities. That barrier shields your brain from toxic substances in the blood. Oops. Anyway, that blood-brain barrier protects your brain from toxic substances in your blood from getting in while letting brain waste out. That means this free radical scavenger can freely flow into your brain. It accumulates in the cerebral spinal fluid, having free access to the nervous system as well. It's mostly found in olives and their oil and some in red wine. And just FYI, oxidized LDL cholesterol can naturally cross the blood-brain barrier. Hydroxytyrosol. There's a lot of studies and research showing that these antioxidants, those three, this is kind of interesting, have anti-cancer effects, promoting apoptosis of several types of tumor cells by puncturing the vesicles in tumor cells that store the waste, causing premature cell death. Mary Flynn talks about that while not harming normal cells. Reduce inflammation and has antimicrobial properties, also known to reduce oxidation of LDL cholesterol. This is another thing that's kind of worth noting here. Word for word, in Alzheimer's, a chemical called beta amyloid peptide accumulates in the brain. This accumulation may lead to oxidative stress, causing large amounts of cells to die, possibly leading to some symptoms of Alzheimer's. Glutamate is a major excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, but it's also a powerful oxidant that can, in some cases, lead to cell death called oxidative glutamate toxicity. Studies show hydroxytyrosol protects the cells of the nervous system from dying after exposure to these stressors. Then we have oleacin, the next one down. Has anti-inflammatory properties, particularly effective at helping prevent atherosclerotic plaque from breaking down and breaking off into your blood vessels, causing stroke or heart attack. Oleuropein is best known for its blood pressure lowering effect. It's been shown to have cardioprotective, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer properties, and has neuroprotective functions along with reducing oxidative damage. And oleocanthal, that's kind of how this class got started tonight. We go to Greece and we got the special olive oil there that is super high in oleocanthal. There's hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed studies from around the world, all share the same empirical evidence. Oleocanthal is well documented and prized for its strong anti-inflammatory properties, having the same anti-inflammatory capabilities as a low dose of ibuprofen, but all natural. It helps prevent chronic inflammation. It's not instant pain relief. I broke my leg and I'm going to take a shot of all the high oleocanthal olive oil and the swelling's gone. But you can get your inflammation markers checked, and it does proven science research to keep that inflammation in your body down, which causes a whole host of other problems. And you take that every day and it slowly builds up. A really interesting story, and we'll get into how that was discovered. Incredibly, that antioxidant is only found in olive oil, nowhere else. So without the synergistic effect of all these compounds and others in your oil, honestly, you're just getting calories and possibly oxidized compounds. Some other benefits worth mentioning in olive oil are improving insulin sensitivity and glucose transport, nutrient absorption, cognitive health, some cancers and arthritis. There's much information on microbiota and gut health. And speaking of that, I want to introduce our next speaker, Dr. June Funk. I saw Dr. Funk about a year ago with a torn bicep tendon that just would not go away. It had been bothering me for months. I had 2 different treatments of prolotherapy injections. Hey there. And first one was about 20% better. And then after the second one, a couple months later, I'm going to give it a 95%, as good as new. Most interesting, my wife and I both went to her office to check out our microbiota and gut health, which is your poop test. That was really interesting to look at. I mean, not the poop, but the test, you know what I mean? Anyway, Dr. June Funk has been practicing naturopath medicine since 2007 and completed her medical fellowship in Ometepe, Nicaragua. She's volunteered in medical expeditions from the Peruvian Amazon to Valladolid, Mexico, San Pedro, Brazil, and the bucket list is ever growing. She specializes in regenerative medicine here in the Wenatchee Valley and is the owner of Funk Regenerative Med Clinic. Her passion is to help patients have more play and pleasure in and outside the bedroom. She uses cutting-edge regenerative injections and bioenergetic therapies to help patients recover from musculoskeletal diseases. Yes, so they can play more. Dr. Funk also has a phenomenal sexual health program that helps couples build intimacy in their relationships and also helps men and women with sexual health issues like erectile dysfunction in men and pain with sex in women. Passion and pleasure are what she desires in spades for everyone. And having experienced multiple sports and motor vehicle injuries and living with Lyme disease has helped Dr. Funk realize the importance of good gut and brain health, often optimized via functional medicine testing. The importance of healthy fats like quality olive oil in the body cannot be stressed enough. She's proud to serve the Wenatchee Valley, and her curious mind, tender heart, and ever adventurous spirit is what drives her to help patients live their most divine, healthy life. Here you are.
In our enteric nervous system, which is the other brain, and they really talk to each other, right? So imagine if you're eating foods and they're not very healthy foods, or if you're eating bad fats, unlike the fats that food cells that can store, you're not the bacteria that's in your gut and the microbes that's in your gut actually isn't producing a lot of the neurotransmitters, the B vitamins, right? And a lot of the hormones that actually your brain uses to make you feel good, to make you feel happy, to make you feel energetic, right? So again, everything that you put into your body actually really, really matters. So when Bruce had me present, he asked me if I could talk a little bit about a test called the GI map test. And it's one of my favorite tests that I use in office. And it's a functional test, so if you go to your typical doctor that's not a naturopath or a functional med doc or a nurse practitioner, they're probably not going to understand what you're saying. But I would have to say the GI map test is one of my go-to tests for anyone with skin issues or anyone with inflammation in their bodies or any type of chronic illness. And the reason being is that it checks for viruses, it checks for bacteria, tons of bacteria. And if you think about it, like your gut has 100 trillion microbes, right? 100 trillion. So we are literally a walking person with tons and tons of microbes in our body. So we have to treat it really well, right? And that means, again, good fats and good proteins into our bodies. So anyway, so the GI map test for viruses, test for bacteria, test for protozoans and parasites. So even though we live in a pretty clean country, there are a lot of us that are walking around with parasites, and that's just because we get it through our water systems, we get it through many different, through hand food. So yeah, I mean, in general, if you have a chronic illness that isn't, that typical medications and typical things, alternative treatments are working for you, really consider a gut test. It also can check for, again, viral infections, and then the GI map test looks at H. pylori. So again, if there's a lot of reflux, if there's a lot of food sensitivities, it also looks at whether you're sensitive to gluten and gliadin. And then it also looks at whether you're metabolizing and whether you're actually producing enzymes in your body. So again, if you're looking for one test to kind of rule them all, the GI map test is definitely one of those things. And the reason why I'm impressing upon this is because what the physician can get out of this test, you can really use to basically help somebody. So when Bruce found out that one of the main supplements that I use to help somebody with like a bacterial infection or a viral infection is olive leaf extract, he was like, "What? Dr. Funk, are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, definitely." So olive leaf extract is what I typically use to help to fight different types of antimicrobial infections, as well as a product called biocidin. And obviously, like, you get it online and stuff, but I wanted to just impress upon the fact that there's many benefits of olive oil and olive leaf extract, and because it's so high in polyphenols, and in polyphenols, again, really strong antioxidant. So yeah, so the GI map test, I would say, is the go-to test if you want to really have a good overview of not just your physical, because it also looks to see if you have leaky gut, right? So if you want to look at what type of bacteria, whether you have really high good bacteria or really high good bacteria and really low bad bacteria, you need to have those in balance. So just randomly going to take probiotics is not necessarily a great idea. You want to really have a good balance in your body, right? So again, looking at the physical aspect of your gut, but also looking at the different types of bacteria and in what range and in what ratio, those are also really important things. So if I was to have you take away, from my quick talk, it would basically be listen to your gut, right? Your intuition is extremely important because it is a living being. And then the other thing is, if in doubt, if there's something a health condition that you have, really have your physician look at your gut health, because it's that important. It really does, if you have a lot of systemic inflammation in your body, looking and addressing the liver and gut health is the best thing that you can do for your body. So again, I am Dr. Jill Funk, and I am so proud to serve the Valley, and thank you very much.
So I'm going to let you go here shortly. I just want to briefly cover a couple things here. I want to tell you about our prized Kalamata olive oil from Greece and what makes it so unique, that it was a 3-time winner of the world's healthiest olive oil competition for its high oleocanthal levels. It's one of those oils that's so special, I try to get enough to last throughout the whole year. Usually we switch our oils every 6 months. It's so perfectly balanced with all of ours, I don't worry about it going rancid. We have about 100 bottles left of last year's Kalamata. It's at 338 parts per million oleocanthal. Normal is 20 to 50, and high could be 100, 150. I'm still using it at home right now. There's another batch on the way, be here in April, and it's a staggering 429 parts per million, beating last year's. And for UP oil to get that high chemistry, it has to be harvested about 4 to 6 weeks early, very little oil. I do want to mention, just briefly on here, so this is an HPLC report on the right-hand side. This is that Kalamata I was talking about that's, which one is this? This is the one that's coming. On the far left there is a whole bunch of olive oils. You'll see across the top the specific varietal, and down the left is the different chemistry. The very top bottom you'll see biophenols. See how that level varies? And again, it doesn't mean one's better than the other, and has nothing to do with judging as far as a competition for taste. But for me, if I'm going to use an olive oil, I want one that's higher in antioxidants as much as I can get. But if you look about halfway down on the left there, you'll see oleocanthal. And if you go across, gosh, there's a low of 15 up to 130. And again, those numbers can just vary all over the board. So that's actually how I order my olive oil. And this just quickly here, that's Peter. That was our classroom for the day in his olive grove, talking about how his story was. He sent some olive oil to Veronica Foods and like thinking he's got the best olive oil. And they're like, yeah, it's okay. And he was pretty surprised by that. But working with them, he ended up winning the highest oleocanthal level in the world competition 3 years in a row. And part of that is harvesting 6 weeks early, which he said in Greece, November 21st, it's in stone, that's when you harvest. Get much more fruit, much more oil, but anyway, he just joked about how hard it was to get his family to convince him we got to pick this 6 weeks early. That was our classroom for the evening down below, doing some chemistry and tasting. That's the Mani Peninsula where we were at, very rocky terrain. So we picked 40 trees, that's me on the left there. 40 trees, those are the olives, and 1 bag of oranges we picked, and we made our own fused orange olive oil. Uncle Poppy in the middle, so we had a big party that night, and we filled our own bottles. Interesting, like I said, we did 40 trees. We only ended up with 43 bottles of oil. Very little. He's down 50% from last year, and that oil being picked a little early. This is not a UP oil. That was just what was left when we were there. Just amazing. That's us on the end with our bottles we got there. But I sincerely believe high phenol oil is a vital part of a healthy lifestyle that Americans have overlooked far too long. It's been used for thousands of years in the Mediterranean, and now modern science is scientifically proving what apparently the Greeks knew in antiquity, that it's all good for you. To start feeling better, I believe everyone here should cut something out of your diet. That butter, that pop, mocha, something, and replace it with copious amounts of olive oil. And just lastly, I'm going to say get your blood test to do some research on your own. There's many articles written by well-meaning chefs, journalists, bloggers, etc. But look for peer-reviewed studies. I honestly say that I put my olive oil in every single thing I eat. I mean, peanut butter jelly sandwich has got olive oil on it, believe it or not. So before you buy any oil, kind of look and see what's in your oil. I wanted to show you this. This is just our staff. Here's some references. I really suggest you take a picture. You can look up a lot of stuff from those resources. Our staff's going to be outside tonight if you're interested in any of the Kalamata oil we have from last year. We've got about 100 bottles left. We're still selling that at the same price. This next batch coming in April, May will be $10 more, just because really the shortages in Spain, and Peter Licarius' recognition is growing quite a bit for his olive oil. I'm going to stay if you have any questions for myself. Our speakers will be here. If you have any questions, I suggest come and talk to us. Sorry it's been such a long class, but I really like your feedback too. Let me know what you think. And I really appreciate you coming.